Shivani Kapoor, and I am a creative problem solver, also known as the creative director for Good Grid Agency. I have a passion for storytelling through branding and graphic design, and this is one of my main focuses when taking on clients through our agency. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the anchors in branding, which is logo design. A logo should be more than just a mark for a company or product. It is the first impression or peek into the story of a company, product, or person behind the brand. We see logos every day, and the most successful ones you'll notice usually have more of a meaning behind them, rather than just looking aesthetically pleasing. Some famous examples of these include 1. The FedEx logo. They have a hidden forward moving arrow between the E and the X you'll notice in the word mark, representative of speed, accuracy, and their strive for perfection. Number 2 is the Tostitos Chips logo. They do this really well with the small party scene in the middle of their word mark, which is 2 friends sharing chips together. A third example is Pinterest. The tip of the P is actually formed to look like the pointed tip of a push pin, which you would traditionally use to physically pin ideas to a board. The last example I have is the Bio logo. Formerly a part of Sony, the logo pairs an analog wave with a 1 and a 0 to represent how the company brings analog and digital technologies together. These logos didn't just come about randomly with hidden meanings. There was a process followed for each of these by a designer or team of creatives to build that layer of a concept or a story behind them. Today I want to talk about that process and not focusing on or worrying about a perfectly designed logo as an end result. Instead, we will focus on the storytelling process that then leads to that final design. You want to create an idea for a logo that has meaning and not worry about the aesthetics of it for now. So, to start, we will walk through my process of concepting a logo. Overall, every logo project is a creative problem-solving challenge to best tell a brand story. While the solution can be fairly subjective and vary based on the designer and their style of problem solving, there are still some guidelines and framework that I believe should always be followed in order to produce a logo with true meaning that represents a company's story. This is that step-by-step framework and how I achieve each step in my process. Step number 1 is the discovery. Discovery is about getting to know the client's business, its history, industry, competitors, and audience in order to start understanding and building their story. For me, this step involves having a pre-written list of questions. For example, some of these questions may include, when people interact with your brand, how do you want them to feel? If your company was a person, how would you describe their character, language, tone, or purpose? What kind of clothes do they wear? What car do they drive? Do you have specific symbols or imagery you identify with? For example, an animal, a landmark, or others. What 3 to 5 adjectives would you use to describe your brand? All of these questions really help get to the core of who the brand is and really gets you to know their story and where they're coming from. From this, I create a draft of a creative brief so I have it to reference for the remainder of the project. And then there's step 2, research and brainstorming, which is where we get into the mood boards. This is where it gets even more fun. Pulling inspiration from the world around you is one of the main keys of being a designer. Constant observation and absorption of colors, shapes, feelings, emotions, trends, and how those are all intertwined is how you can succeed in thinking like a designer to pull a full story together for a brand. Also, the diversity in what you consume is key. I personally believe that it is so important to always keep an open mind and expose yourself to as many different life experiences and perspectives as possible. Learning about different cultures, practices, and standards in the world. Even things that you would normally not be drawn to, as these things will open your eyes to other segments of society, as well as learning about other audiences besides the ones in your own bubble. To start with the construction of a mood board, I research visual styles and words I associate with the brand after doing the discovery with the client. In this step, I begin searching for visual references, colors, images, and other already existing graphics that could represent these ideas. You can browse magazines or other resources available. As a timely solution, I will browse sites like Pinterest, Dribbble, Behance, those are just a few examples, for existing designs that would be in line or inspiration to what I'm looking to achieve, again using the words I pulled from the discovery. I will repeat the same thing with other keywords, trying to ultimately organize them into at least 3 overall concepts to create 3 separate mood boards. Examples of what some mood board categories can be include a minimalist, clean mood board, or maybe a natural organic mood board, or maybe a more retro and outgoing mood board. The idea is to have different organized boards with different moods and feelings that all tell a branch or facet of the brand's story. These are then presented to the client. I go through each board and have them give me a gut reaction to each page, pointing out what they love as well as what they hate, also telling me which is their overall favorite board. This helps to narrow the focus and help build the guardrails for me to keep in mind as I go into the next step, which is sketching the actual logo concepts. So now let's get into logos. Before we get into sketching logo concepts, it is important to note the 5 types of logos and the differences of each. The first one is a word mark or a logo type, which is a freestanding text-only logo that spells out the whole company name in a stylized or customized typeface. If a company has a unique name, this type of logo can be very easily recognizable. We want to be careful to not feel too generic with a wordmark logo and that it has mnemonic value. Some famous examples of wordmark logos include Google, Coca-Cola, or Etsy. The second type of logo is a lettermark. This is a symbol representing a company using the brand's initials or first letter. Lettermarks are great for simplifying long or complicated names, but these usually depend on repeated viewing to really gain recognition. Some examples of this include the CNN logo, H&M, HBO, or NASA. The third type of logo is a brand mark. A brand mark features a graphic image or illustration of something that represents the specific company, product, or brand. This can be a more literal icon or something more highly conceptual and abstract. Brand marks on their own, without a word mark, may be difficult to recognize without heavy advertising, though. Successful examples of this include the Nike swoosh, the Target bullseye, or the Apple logo. And what you'll notice about all of those is that they can stand on their own, even without the word, and you still know who they stand for. The fourth type of logo is a combination mark. And as the name suggests, a combination mark involves a combination of a word mark and a brand mark as separate elements. Some famous examples of this include the full Microsoft logo, the entire Adobe logo, or the Louis Vuitton logo, where it has the LV with the full name underneath it. And the fifth type of logo is an emblem. Similar idea to a combination mark, but with an emblem, the company name is inseparable from the pictorial element, and the elements are never isolated. These are usually great for patches or for logos used in larger formats. However, they usually have the biggest issue with legibility when sized down small. Some visual examples of these are the original Starbucks logo, the Burger King logo, or the Harley-Davidson logo, which you'll also notice are usually on very large signs by the road, and those are badges and emblems for a reason. Now that we know the 5 types of logos, we can get into which styles will work best for the client. We now have a good idea of the company's story, as well as the overall direction they would like to take their visual brand in, based on the client brief, the mood boards, and their feedback to the mood boards. So now it's time to start sketching. This is where you can start drawing out pictorial mark ideas, letters, and other icons that could represent different facets of the brand, and even combining multiple elements to really tell the story while keeping the mark as simple as possible. Which brings up 3 signs I look for in a successful logo concept. The first one being uniqueness. You really want to make sure it is a distinctive idea that is also easy to remember. The second thing is appropriateness. This just means making sure it is relevant for the company and the industry it is in. And the third thing is simplicity. You just want to make sure it has not too many elements, and you really want to make sure that each logo concept focuses on a single story. And also keeping in mind that the logos will need to sometimes be sized down small. So that is a brief overview of my process for concepting a company's logo with real meaning and a story behind them. This always results in a mark that is more impactful and leaves an impression not just for the company, but also for the audience the company is trying to reach.